Welcome, listeners of For the Greater Good podcast. Thank you so very much for joining us today. I am here as one of your co hosts, Chanel Dubique, with my other co host.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back again. I am your other co-host, Uzumako or Jacko. I hope everyone's doing well. We are in April.
Time is going by so fast. We are in April, but it's amazing though. I feel like the first quarter was a nice reset, a nice structural change, put things in perspective. What do we want to do for the rest of the year?
Yes,
And how do we want to put things in place to really go ahead with accomplishing and getting into life with the balance and success that we really want? So I'm glad that we are past the first quarter. This is, I think, the hardest
yeah,
part. Is the first part of when you're starting anything. It's just seeing where it takes you.
exactly. So I think now that we're made the full transition over to spring, the weather is getting warmer and colors are blooming all over now. And so I think it definitely aligns with that too. We're just all in a much better mood, kind of like a refresh to take on quarter two.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, new life does start in spring, when everything is blooming and everything gets to sprout again. So it's an opportunity for us as well, humans, to have a rebirth of our own circumstances
Yes.
and our own opportunities. And with that brings in the introduction of our podcast title for today's episode, The War Outside and the War Within, because we can see what the global climate is. And it's just disheartening in so many ways to be on the outside looking in and feel like there is a loss of hope. There is very little we can do, knowing that it does impact us in many different ways, but we are close but still so far away from the immediate struggle that is happening, externally on the Middle East side. And it is a difficult time because as humans, we have to come to the accountable fact of what is our responsibility in all of this. What roles do we play in all of this, and how do we see this, whether it is going to be focused on our governments as responsible and accountable for this, or how do us as a human element in that impact and influence how these wars play out, and how can peace be derived from all of that. It's definitely a difficult topic, but we are humans as well impacted by this, whether it is just an emotional part, how we feel, how we have our sentiments towards it. I imagine, Uzo, we're having a
Oh.
conversation around that right now, expressing thoughts and feelings about it.
I don't think so. I think right now everyone is just kind of wondering, okay, this is going on right now. What's going to change on all aspects, right? I
Yeah.
mean, some of us are even currently now feeling the effects of it. I mean, you look around and not only is there inflation when you go and buy common things, even whether it's you're going out to eat at a restaurant or whether you are just buying common like home products, beauty products. So we're starting to feel the cost there. I mean, it was funny. My roommate Ify and I were just laughing about how a common small little cup of coffee is $7.
Time has changed. I'm gonna make that coffee from
And
home
we're
now.
just like, oh my goodness. Just the little things that we don't think about that we're forced to think about now.
Mhm.
A serious note, yes, the prices of things increasing. I think mortgage rates right now even are they decreased a little bit. Like I know they were like sub six before, but now they're kind of back up and it's not a good still not a good time to buy, for like people that were thinking of being homeowners soon. The cost of gas, oh my goodness. Have you seen these prices lately? Making me rethink where am I going?
I know that drives the conversation in many ways and put things again back into perspective of what are we doing? What are we doing with ourselves? And it
Right.
definitely highlights the big question, who pays the cost of geopolitical conflicts? Who pays the cost of that?
I
Right?
know. Like I just mentioned, we're starting to feel the effects now. When we talk about geopolitical conflict, the conversations usually centers around our leaders, the strategy, or national interests even. But people who really carry the cost every day are us. We are carrying it. Families, children, entire communities whose lives are disrupted in ways that we didn't choose to. I mean, the little things like coffee, my whole life is just
As the moment you mentioned cost something, I started laughing about it. I just knew it was coffee for you.
but On a
Of
more
course.
serious note, yes,
Yeah.
families whose loved ones who are out there fighting in this war for us who have even lost. I mean, we did see that there have been some casualties, and my heart goes out to those families that are now entering in this new year without their loved ones that are now have to figure out what does life look like, you know? Communities, especially in those areas that are affected right now, who have lost stability, and children in this time growing up without uncertainty. Like, for example, a political decision might happen thousands of miles away, but the result could be a family having to leave their home overnight or a child having to grow up without one of their parents. Like the headlines might move on, but those our lives are now permanently like changed.
Yeah. The ink does not pay the consequence. It is
Mhm.
the human life, the human cost of that. The cultural change is a generational trauma because you get to leave your home and everything that you know. And while many people might think if it's an asylum situation, you might have a better opportunity at something else, but did you ask for that change?
Right.
All the things that you have built, all that you've grown up around with you, and the village that helped build who you are and instill the person that you've become, that changes overnight without anyone asking you a question of course, did you want this? And we don't get to say yes or no, and we would have an answer, but that response is not what they're looking for because some people, many of us will answer with the empathy part of it. And because that's, if we don't go looking for conflict, that's what we know we rely on is our empathy towards others, that discomfort that we know what our right might be as a wrong for somebody else and know that, okay, how can we embrace a better world that is just, that's flourishing? My neighbors are safe and we can live in harmony, we can live in peace. That alone helps in so many ways to kind of grow a global, peaceful community. But can we really thrive from that? We know I don't want to be naive to say that the world will never have wars. And it's sad to even think that, it's part of our world, it's part of our nature to have conflict with each other because most often it's also what we as humans and our own emotions and feelings that we're thinking is also going to drive that. So it's hard to be on one side of this. Is just, I know for me personally, it's very difficult seeing the human casualties that are happening across the world, seeing the people be
It's
displaced, the disruption of families, the disruption of community, the economic instability that is happening, so that one community of power might think that, okay, we get to impose these on someone else. What about their lives? Do they get a say in any of this? So it definitely is heartbreaking to see so much of somebody else's land, culture, identity be torn away and taken apart like that.
right. I mean, how would you say that these wars right now are reshaping families and generations?
It could have two ways of being reshaped, I would say. First is going to be a very heartbreaking stance. Many people are getting separated.
Yeah.
Loved ones are dying, whether on the front line of that battlefield or whether from the receiving end of the weapons of that battlefield itself or the strategies that were implemented for that battlefield. And they now have to carry through life with the pain of that. I recently met, and we're a growing acquaintance. She still remembers the war in Cambodia years ago. She was between 2 and 5, seeing her father die before her.
Wow.
And she still lives with that trauma physically manifesting in her body. So now that is 40 plus years, and that is still affecting her life. That is still affecting her family life. So now that gets transferred from one person to another, and it is manifested physically, mentally, emotionally. We might think that because that physical wound has healed, everything else within that underneath surface has healed, but that is not the case at all. So it is definitely reshaping our level of trust, our level of empathy, our level of confidence, our fears. It changes how we operate as human beings on that emotional level and how we show up in the world for ourselves and our community and our families. Because at the end of the day, if we don't know how to cope with one thing, then it makes it harder. But I think it also offers a moment of transformation, an opportunity for that reflection as well to see how do we change? How are we becoming less or more human What is that element of us that we have the ability to look for within our heart, within ourselves, and say, all right, this happened. And it's not this happened, get over it. No, it happened. We take ownership of it,
Yeah,
whether it is ownership of our actions for that destruction or ownership of our pain received from that destruction. How can we really, as ourselves, take that responsibility and say, life has changed? But I have the spirit and the human courage to move on with that pain and perhaps let it mark a new identity for me, a new journey for me, a new thing for me that I get to maybe build a platform on so that others can benefit from. And your pain becomes the foundation that so many others get the chance to live their own lives from. So you carry that pain from both fronts, whether you choose to do something negative with it or something positive with it. But it's certainly reshaping underneath all of that how we genuinely show up as humans moving forward.
I definitely agree. I mean, one thing that comes to mind, my parents will never stop talking about it is, I mean, they lived through like in Nigeria, the Biafran War, and all of they're
Exactly.
still carrying a lot of that trauma. And the fact that when I think about when my parents, immigrated here, they have very little memory of their childhood because of that. And that has definitely affected their new lives and identity that they had to make coming to the US, especially trying to gather certain documents and memories that were lost during that time. It's just, you just see it with us and you see it with our grandparents who have lived through similar wars and just displacement. And even like you mentioned, like decades later, it just influences the way that they think and how they navigate their lives moving forward, how they save money, how they talk about safety, how they view other nations too. And yeah, those
100%.
experiences shape, and it also gets me thinking about how I guess it's a little reflection for me too. Like maybe I should have paid more attention in my history classes to really, I mean, it's like, little things like that where you don't fully embrace the importance and significance of studying these wars in school because you're just like, I'm just trying to pass this class. But now as an adult, when you're kind of living through it and you're seeing how it's starting to affect you in your life, you're just like, wow, this brings me back to when we were learning about this stuff in school. And now it worries me because how can we encourage the next generation to reflect and to remember the times that our grandparents and our ancestors have gone through when they're trying to erase that history in our books, you
Very
know?
true. Because as you were sharing, there's the very thought of the fact that not all of the true events of those time are historically gathered,
Yeah.
really informed and played back to us. So we don't even have all the facts of what happened. It's more of what do they want us to be informed of. And it's very difficult because you get to build an opinion or you're forced to not build an opinion on facts that are not entirely accurate or
Right.
have all the information in front of you to make that decision or to decide how you want to operate and show up. But considering their own interests, whether it is government or communities, do you feel like nations are more about protecting themselves or protecting influence when we think of the scale of war and the current times we're in right now?
I think it's definitely a hard question to consider because you want to think that your country is looking out for your best interest, but in reality, I think it's often both. Like nations want to protect their people, they want to protect their security, but sometimes when we have external influences and power, especially from other nations that are influencing and leading our decisions about how this is going to impact our own people of our nation, so country might say it's building a military presence somewhere for defense, but then that presence can also strengthen its influence in that region. And it makes, especially with the current war going on, like how much of the, other nations' influence do they have over us and how we're playing a part of it. Some people are wondering, is this really even our war to be in? Something that I think about too. I mean, like you just mentioned, there are certain things that our government wants us to see on these different news stations. And with the headlines, it adds an added layer of, is this really what's going on? Like, you just have to kind of question, because I know certain news channels do take certain perspectives on current issues. So I think the line between protection and influence because of that gets really, really like mucky and
Gets blurry in between. I would imagine there is good intention between that blurry line. And that good intention could be from both sides, because
complicated?
based on the world that you're living in, you can say that I want the protection of influence for my country because this is where I reside, this is where I'm from, this is my home. Or
Right.
you can say that I want the level of that security because I want to have it protect what we have grown and what we have built in the past. But a lot of it definitely does come down to, especially when we are just the mere civilians, the humans that are just on the outside of this, on these circumstances, these wars, so we can really say what it is, sadly, is that they want to have us wonder what is it that is happening out there without giving us how this is affecting us or telling us in a way that we want to give you all the facts of what is happening, but with some protection measures on there, so you're not frightened. There isn't, pessimism and worry and panic and chaos and pandemonium affecting our communities. But it's
But
more
sometimes that could also be the goal too.
true,
Yeah.
but let us measure that. And I understand, it shouldn't be like us hoarding toilet paper during COVID. I understand that those things gonna, have
Yes.
us be in such chaos. But to a level that we can understand and we can respect, what is happening. So we do not have, we do not build separate agendas in our mind as humans. We are of a level where we have full comprehension, and most of us have full autonomy of our being and of our mind and whatnot. But not just what to tell us, but how to tell us perhaps could be the way that we better understand what is really going on. And many countries will do things for both, I think, to be very honest. There are countries that want to live in peace, and maybe their influence on the global stage is not the same. So, therefore, they strive for more towards security, protecting what we have already built, whereas others strive towards more of an influence. Because just as you said, there might be a building of a military base somewhere that is definitely not of the origin territory, and now they have it on an island or country that is not of origin base. And that is an economic and geopolitical expansion because now you have that influential benefit. And of course, we should have friends around the world. Earlier, we want to be friends with our neighbors. We're a global community. It would literally be about saying that my neighbors on the other plot of land, I'm in conflict with them. And for that reason, don't cross my fence line or don't cross this, so I'm gonna take your chickens, I'm gonna kill your chickens. In time, it's even if we put it on the global scale, this is exactly what's happening. Don't come across my territorial line, don't threaten my interests, don't threaten what I have, or else this is gonna be the consequence of it. I know that there are policies and there are treaties being drawn and written up and discussed, but can it really be for a long enduring time that allows us to truly live in peace and harmony? Humans, we have always had the foundation of conflict with each other, of competition with each
That's
other.
just the history with everything. There's
It's
always
just
conflicts.
history. Yes. It's almost like we can't get away from it, but we can find a way. I imagine after all these years of our own evolution, that we can find a way to maybe have some peace without conflict, sorry, somewhere,
So
some
that
great
drives the question then, like, do you feel like there is a difference between security and dominance over another?
100%. I think that there is a great difference between the two. As mentioned by both you and I, a community might be seeking its own security because of what it has built and because of perhaps its history of being taken advantage of or being threatened. Now we have this advantage, we have leverage somewhere, or we have built ourselves up to a way that we can feel safe. We can feel safe in our own backyards, in our own country. So we want to protect that, and therefore we have security for that. But there are some countries that have bigger influence than others, and for that, it is more of paying or lobbying for that expansion, whether it is not just even land, but by paper. Whatever is being signed gets to say that I have a stake in how you decide the policies of your country or the policies of this territory is going to be governed. And why not let them do their own thing? But of course, when we say do our own thing, do it with the interest that a whole human race is being impacted. And you're living in a global community. So what you decide to foster in yours, know that you're also allowing it to be fostered elsewhere. Because you cannot just protect your borders without thinking that the outside community is shut out from that. It's not that case at all. So there is a difference, and different countries decide
Yeah.
to use strategies and structural changes and policies to suit their agenda, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's also kind of sometimes it may not also be obvious whether there is a difference too, because one nation might increase its defenses near its borders because they feel threatened, right? But then the neighboring country might also experience that same action as intimidation. And so what really feels like security to one side can actually feel like dominance to another.
Very
Um,
true. Good point.
it's just hard to say that, but you would think that these countries, as you mentioned, as they're looking into certain policies that they have and treaties that they have with one another, that they are really putting the best interest of its people at heart and really utilizing that opportunity to make sure that they are really implementing security measures without trying to make it seem like they're trying to overtake another country or exert some type of dominance. But it's always a hard thing because, again, can't really control what another person may be thinking. And with this, there's also a lot of other added external factors that we have to think about too. Like we in the US, we're American, other country, we have to think about other countries and their religious aspects, cultural aspects as well. There's just different belief systems that we're up against too when we think about this. So there's a lot of factors that I think make it really difficult.
So many moving pieces. And I love that you just touched on something that my mind did not go on earlier, because one country might say it's for their security and the other one interprets it as dominance. So it does beg the question now is, when does defending a nation really comes out as expanding power? Like,
I feel like that shift usually happens when the goal now is not protection. When that conversation starts including influence and territory or long-term leverage, then it's no longer about protecting your own people. You just want to take control now and you just want to have more influence. And historically, we've even seen conflicts begin with the language of defense, but then they expand into bigger ambitions. Like one nation might start protecting its borders, but eventually the strategy becomes about controlling their regions or shaping their global influence and power over someone else. It really just comes down to who our leaders are of these nations and what are their belief systems? What do they believe in? Are they going to be easily influenced by another country or by another nation because of resources or other material things that they might want? Or are they about money? Like, what do they truly believe? And I think
so
that's a big thing to take into consideration too when we think about when does it become more than protection and about power? Well, it comes down to who's the leader. What do
yeah,
they think?
right.
What do they
And they
want?
might tell a really,
Stake into it.
please say that again, I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're good. Like, do they have a hidden like personal stake in the matter too?
Mhm. And I was just going to say, from what you were sharing, they could tell a really good story. And what does that story really sell? Does it align with how that person has lived in the past? Like, if you were to do like a look back period and say, I'm going to look back 10 years, like, what is the work that you've done? What have you advocated for? What do you stand for? What are some of your values? What are the
Right.
foundations that you live your life from? And you could tell a really good, captivated tale of what that person has done and what that person could become when they stand in these shoes. But I think it's just a, when does it become more about expanding power versus a nation's security? That's a very thin line in between, because, one story can be told that this is what it's going to be, and then something else entirely different is being played, like as we can see in the current terms of the war. One thing is being said to the people while we see something else physically being manifested. But I think it is just become it when it becomes about expanding that power, it is really when you go in and you make rules and you write agendas that dictates how another nation, another global community or borderline should live their lives, and how you come in as an entire foreign nation and you take ownership of certain landmarks, certain territories in that country, in that region. So originally, this is their land, this is their right there. And unless there is an infringement entirely on human rights, I understand that another country can want to come and defend that, which I would support, the protection of us humans. That's what I think we can all stand for, is how can we see one of us being threatened and all of us standing up for that one person or for that country. How can we do that and play a role in that? So it is not about someone trying to be a bully and saying, okay, this is what you should be doing and this is how we want you to do it. But maybe I can advise and suggest that maybe you do things this way for your people
Yeah.
without the response being, well, you can't come in here and tell me what to do for my people. How can
Right.
we have again come back to that harmony as a global community for each other?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But also too, another thought that comes in alignment with that is, what could this current state be teaching us and the opportunity of it to begin again?
It's teaching us a lot, I think.
It's like, oh, it's just so eye-opening.
Yeah, absolutely. I've read about wars. I've read about conflict. And in February, a friend of mine was doing a music tour in Germany, and they were sharing with me like all the villages that they went to, and they were talking about the war, the World War, and how America came in and like flattened these villages, and there were still generations that rose from these ashes and get to talk about that nowadays. And as that was being relayed to me and shared with me, and I've clearly read about the stories in the past, being from the Caribbean, you hear about the pirates that came and calling the local natives savages and all those things. I just couldn't fathom that. I couldn't have imagined living in a time, and I commended my ancestors greatly for their triumph and their courage and their bravery because I don't know how I would have survived this time. So it is definitely allowing us to really take a stake on who are we coming as people. We've grown from this. Many of us have lived through many years of peace, at least in our Western world, that is. But we do not know what that is like. The Western world has been brought into wars since that period of time. But many of us do not know what it is on that front line. It's our military that has gone to these wars, and that 1%, carries back with them the trauma. So it is more of, okay, what do we stand for? The military cannot just abandon and say, well, I'm not going to go to war. They will be charged with desertion, leaving command and all of those things. But at the end of the day, it is just about, again, how can we stand for each other? What is our empathy at play in all of this? What are the changes that we want to see in the world? Because know that this season gives us the opportunity for greater voice. You mentioned voting. Who do we give our vote to if we aren't able to give our voice ourselves? What are we contractually allowing into this global world that we're now living in that we can say, well, I'm not going to vote for this person. I'm not going to give this person my support because this is what they stand for. But I'm going to allow somebody else to be on that stage, to take over the platform because I align with what they do. I recognize what they do and I can see the work that they're capable of is something I can get behind and I want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
So it is, who are we becoming? And if we're unable to truly take up the mantle and be the change that we want to see in the world, be the change we want to see in the world. So if we aren't able to physically do that one piece of us, then how can perhaps you and I do that together? And this is why we have our podcast, informing people. And if we aren't able to do that just with two of us, how can we give our voice and our time and our energy to somebody else who really wants to make a change and we can see has the capability of bringing that change to the world?
Yeah. I think it starts with just having these conversations and being
Yeah.
more aware of what is going on. I think it also important for us to continue to educate ourselves. A lot of the times some of us do make decisions without learning about what policies are actually being in place, who is being affected by it, what do our current leaders say about certain things, but even what it's interesting to also look into like what their viewpoints on what prior leaders have done if they would have acted the same. I think that also could say a lot about who it is that is coming into our these positions and the influence and the impact that they're going to make. I think also too what this current stage could also is also teaching us is exposing a lot of areas that we may not have been aware that there's still work that needs to be done. Obviously, there's always work that needs to be done, but I think that what this current state is teaching us that it has exposed some weaknesses and relationships between nations that maybe we weren't always aware of. And now that we're seeing it, like we're like, oh, this is actually still a thing. And even how we are prioritizing cooperation. Are we even prioritizing that? Or again, are we going back to that dominance versus protection power? Yeah, expanding power versus protection. Like when crisis happens, like we often see countries reevaluating our alliances, policies, humanitarian responses. And as these moments are, they can also open the door for us, as we're doing right now, to continue asking like deeper questions about what kind of global future do we actually want to create. So, yeah.
If you had a magic wand, or if you could stand in a political role,
Uh-huh.
what would be the global stance you want to take?
It's hard. I think for me to say, I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind obviously is just like peace and how we can work together to utilize like resources and share resources, but at the same time, it's hard. I mean, if I had a magic wand, oh yeah, 100%, that would be magically fixed. Yeah. We're all just working together in union and everyone's all good, you know? But it's so hard because I feel like there's still so much we don't know yet about,
True. Yeah.
yeah, about what other countries have to offer, like what resources are there, how we can align with them. Can we share our resources? What can we build? I think the biggest thing for me, again, on top of that added layer, on top of peace, is just making sure that everyone in the nation just has access to basic needs, honestly, to access to healthcare, number one, access to making sure they have like housing benefits as well, like they're able to have a roof over their head, they're able to work, really working on continuing to decrease the unemployment rate, just basic resources to water. Yeah, just really basic needs like that, I think is the biggest thing for if I had a magic wand, like that's certain things that are the first things that come to my mind. Like really trying, I mean, it goes into like this next topic too, like trying to just continue to build life, continue to build legacy on for everyone.
When I think of the question, I think of perhaps the tiny speck of island, beautiful island from the world, and how far yet not far removed we are from this current conflict. And I were to stand on the stage and say, this is what I want. It's first and foremost listening to the grievances of our people, finding out what are their pains, what are the greatest aches. And if they were to themselves have the opportunity for personal change, what that would look like. And of course, you cannot go and, journal the note of every single citizen and all of that, but at least take a consensus of what people are struggling with and what they want to see resolved in their own lives, their communities. And that tells the story of an opportunity of how to build a stronger foundation. And whether we choose to see if we are building a life, a legacy, a state on invisible wounds, that is definitely something that presents the opportunity for us to know that. Are we doing that? I think we would be, because there has been so much plummeting through the world of one country going to another, taking resources and removing people and extraction and all of these things and extraction of resources, human life, capital, labor, all of these things. These are wounds. These are wounds. And as we began with the episode talking about how that human cost impact and that cost in villages and that cost in families and disruptions that happen, despite how poor one country might see another, that is their richest life. That is what they know. Yes, they will probably see the access and the opportunities of other countries being more available and richer than theirs. But for them, this is the richest life. This is the most vibrant life. And yes, if they did have the opportunity to migrate and go somewhere else and make something else, I would imagine they would want to have that opportunity and maybe come back to their own homeland and continue to build and live with the foundation of how they were raised, not entirely shed that and say, I have a new identity. So that allows us to definitely identify that so much is being built on invisible wounds, whether it is our own lives that we see, okay, this is my life. Something is happening to the people that are going through these wars right now. And therefore, how they choose to rebuild definitely is going to be an instruction of how they processed what they felt, what they fear. Is it fear that is driving that reconstruction of our communities and societies? Or is it trust for a better tomorrow? Or is it that fear that's going to say, well, I don't want you to come and attack me anymore, so I'm going to build the biggest, baddest military? What is going to be that? Is it compassion? Is it anger? Like, what is going to build that tomorrow that we get to stand on and say, all right, this is us? I feel like that is so, so difficult because wounds hurt. And if you choose to go back
Yeah.
there also mentally,
Mhm.
it can definitely
Yeah, and
instruct us in many wrong ways.
even thinking about wounds, you kind of have to think about too, like, is that a reflection of if there's a war within ourselves? I think in some ways, and it can definitely reflect some patterns that we see in relationships, like fear, you mentioned, anger, pride, competition, compassion, the need to protect what we believe belongs to us. We think about disagreements between individuals or communities, like when communication breaks down, people can move quickly from like one misunderstanding to anger, and now there's conflict. And on a global scale, we still have the same tendencies that can play out, and it often continues to play out between nations. So I think like what you just said, like it really comes down to our is what's going on inside of us. Like what do we have going on, yeah, inside that is now reflecting back on how we're choosing to relate to not only another person, but now on a global scale to another nation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Even though we do know that at the end of the day, paper and pen is what dictates
Mhm.
what gets done, what is instructed on. But at the
Yeah.
end of the day, it is still what is within us that's controlling what writes on that pen and paper. So it is what do we feel in that internal environment of ours, that internal engineering? What have we built inside to spill onto that paper, to spill onto the world how we feel? That is a big indicator. How we treat each other is how we treat ourselves and how we feel inside. Because you cannot tell me that you feel sadness and empathy, and yet you choose to inflict that on someone else. That is painful because now you're choosing to say, I feel this and it feels so terrible that I want you to have a taste of what it is I'm feeling right now.
Yeah,
How
some
cruel is
people
that?
are like they still have the mentality like an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth.
But that should not be how we live
Shouldn't.
and
I
how things
really
get
shouldn't.
driven. It's just that how can
Yeah.
we show when you hear contestants on a stage and what is the greatest thing you want to see in the world? World peace, sir. I just want world peace.
I just want
Absolutely.
peace. Just
That
want peace.
just world peace. That is what I would want to see happen because there is just a lot that we can do and there is a lot of harmony that I have seen in my young years that we are capable of. And as I was sharing, like I never imagined myself seeing a war happen, going through a war. I thought those times were way behind us. As the world and we continue to develop as humans, I understand that there is going to be some conflict. There is friction somewhere. Something is not going to work, and therefore we have to work out the kinks. Why can't we work out the kinks with peaceful conversations, peaceful talks, ones that drive us to know that you reside here, I reside here, but I respect where you're coming from?
Yeah. I think we have a big role to play in that too, and it comes down to like we shared earlier, like, are we going to be the change that we want to see? I think we each play a huge role in the culture that we create around us. Though we don't always control like global politics, but the way that we interact with others can shape definitely like the environment that we live in. So just continuing to honor ourselves. And if we do want to see compassion, well, then be that compassion, be that peace that you can share, and that spills onto how you treat other people and how you foster like your relationships moving forward. Choosing empathy when we disagree with someone, being willing to listen to perspectives that are different from us rather than just immediately getting defensive and angry, supporting communities that promote cooperation. These are just little small examples that I know people are out there, we're doing it. I know we're by even having this conversation, and we're also playing a big role in it too. But I think the more that we just continue to follow those footsteps and create those examples for ourselves, we can contribute to a larger culture of peace.
Yeah, I
Mm.
absolutely love that. I 100% agree with you. If peace begins with us as individuals, what role do we get to play? We get to play a very strategic and important role in all of this because, again, we are the ones that is going to be making those decisions of how we interact with each other on an immediate or global scale. And for that, it is more of, okay, how can we see peace with ourselves in the day-to-day operations of our own lives, the conversations that we're having? Do we understand that we might not see the entire picture of somebody else's life? And if they share with us that we don't immediately go towards a conflict stance or hostile position, how can we explore awareness to say, I understand where you're coming from? And if there is something that is of opposing views, how do I get on your page? How can I say I understand what you are saying? And if it is something that doesn't align with you or an interest for the broader community, offer something that works, offer solutions that works. And it's just so difficult because we have lived in closeness with each other for so long, but I feel like it has also been with great isolation, as mentioned. You're on this side of the world, I'm on that side of the world. What you do is none of my business, unless you're thinking of that security and that influence as well, to know that person's become of importance in your perspective for you to also think of them with your planning and strategies. But it does come back down to, okay, how can we just live together and just understand like what it really takes for me to be here with you and resonate and understand and recreate that life that we want to see, which is, I imagine for many of us, just compassion, peace, no conflict. If conflict comes up, how to resolve it as quickly as possible, dissolve that fast. Yeah.
But I think it also an important part too is again, like we have to see other people as equal to us, no matter what race, no matter what ethnicity, no matter the religion, no matter political views. Like I think it really comes down to just how if we can just continue to view others as we are equal, we are here living under the same nation, let's come together.
Very
It
true.
takes time, you
Appreciate
know.
that. It sure does. And I hope that we do get there. I feel like we've taken a few steps back, and I hope a lot of us take it as an opportunity for reflection. How are
Mhm.
we becoming? How are we showing up? Not the unserious generation, but people who really have a say and who really want conversations to be sparked and who
Right.
really want to drive action towards a positive global change. We have the opportunity. We might think, okay, we're not in the great houses that write these policies and who dictate what happens next, but they are individuals just like us. So we might not have that stage, but we do all have a stage to perform on. And what is that stage that we're choosing, and what are the characters we're choosing to play on that stage? And let's choose it when we do with the intention of harmony, the intention of love, the intention of awareness, equal treatment to each other. And just know that what you do is also for the benefit of others.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel so inspired now. Well,
I
but just more drive, as we just mentioned earlier on, just with Q2 and spring and things blooming. It's just a nice conversation and drive for us to like, okay, let's continue pushing
yeah.
forward, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the limiting of fear that we can have this conversation, even though we feel like people might say you're not qualified to have that conversation, we're all impacted one way or another. And therefore, if you
Absolutely.
are impacted, you have the right to have that conversation. So just
Yeah.
being able to release it and share our thoughts and perspective on it and what many other people are also thinking as well too.
Mhm.
So may we find new springs in the world, new waters
Yeah.
flowing, and new flowers blooming of peace and harmony. And that was the end of
Amen.
my poem.
Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning into this episode. I encourage you all to continue to follow us on Instagram at For the Greater Good Pod, as well as YouTube for the Greater Good Pod.s.-u, and also follow us on and subscribe on our streaming platforms, Spotify and Amazon Music. Thank you again all for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you guys so very much for listening here. Please do share with someone. Appreciate you.